Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simply Walk the Talk. I am your host, JoshuaJHolland, and today we have Mr. Douglas Bertram on the show. Douglas is the founder of Structural Elements, has 27 years of clinical experience treating patients with his proprietary combination of Chinese medicine and manual therapy. He's an educator, public speaker, and entrepreneur. His education includes a BA in Contemplative Psychology, minor traditional Eastern arts from Naropa University, and a Chinese medical degree from 5 Branches University. He has completed dozens of marathons, 50 and 100-mile ultramarathons, and 3 Ironmans. Nice. He spent several years in outdoor education as an outward bound instructor. I've heard of this. This is very interesting. We'll have to talk about that for sure. His career is basically devoted to human performance in work, life, and sport. And before we started recording, I asked him, what is it that you do, and what is your one-liner? And Douglas said, I balance bodies. So, Doug Bertram, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you are the body balancer, and and I love that you have kind of this blend of East meets West, because I very much do that with my work. And so I'm always intrigued when other people are somewhat similar. But let's kind of talk about your background, and let's talk about how you got to where you are, because clearly you've not been sitting around twiddling your thumbs.
No, man, I'm a busy guy, man. I've been a busy guy for a long time. Even when I have time to recreate, I do things like run crazy miles and stick myself into uncomfortable situations. But no, I was an athlete growing up. And, hurt myself a lot, as most athletes do. Had a really bad wrist fracture. I was a goalkeeper in soccer and fractured my wrist when I was like a freshman in high school. And ultimately, I wasn't real happy with the surgeon. He kind of painted a pretty grim picture of what my future looked like as a goalkeeper. But I worked with an awesome therapist who was like, no, don't believe that. The human body heals if you give it the right set of circumstances. And I was starting goalkeeper back the next year. So from a pretty early age, I got really intrigued by physical medicine and knew that I was going to do something in physical medicine. And, most people, when they see me and I say I've been in practice for 27 years, they kind of, look at me a little funny, But I had a track coach that recommended that I go to massage school right out of high school. That way I would have a skilled trade where I would be able to continue to make a decent living while gaining professional experience and learning more about the different fields. So I did just that. I went to massage school, and then I worked, for chiropractors and physical therapists, and I worked in all sorts of different settings. And when it came time, for grad school, I was really intrigued by systems theory and kind of went down the Chinese med route. You mentioned I went to a Buddhist college, right? So I come from a family of attorneys, so they're all like, what are you doing? But blazing my own path, hey, it's worked out all right for me. So
that's incredible, honestly, because kudos to the people, I would say maybe your early mentors that suggested you go out and do something like that, because not a lot of people do that. A lot of times it's you stay in your lane. At least where I'm from Middle America, Oklahoma, and part of the reason why I wanted to branch out beyond high school was because I just felt this sense of being sort of in a cage.
Sure.
And, I was good at one thing or good at another thing, and people would say, oh, why don't you just stick with that? And for me, I'm like, why can't I do it all?
Right,
And so, yeah. And I also had a good example from my father, who also happens to be someone that was a carpenter. He was a massage therapist. He, did a lot in terms of like Eastern traditions with tinctures and all kinds of stuff. So for me, I had an example that I'm like, yeah, why not do everything?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it's really cool.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Eastern and Western, kind of blend. And, I love to throw in a little like simple language around that. And, the only thing I see as the difference between the two is that in Western medicine, we usually dissect down to individual parts. And in Eastern medicine, we're looking at the whole, right? And so that's the main difference of paradigm. And so, blending the two together, you're both looking at the importance of the parts and how they integrate into the system. Right. That's the integration. And it works, man. Putting those two together, there's a place for it.
Well said. Yeah. I don't think I've heard anybody explain it that well. And it's a really good point. And it's like, for instance, in my world, we do a lot of primal movement out in nature, but doesn't mean you can only do that out in nature. You can also do the same thing in a gym setting, right? And you could also practice CrossFit type of, scenario. You don't have to have a perfect bar. You can use a branch or whatever. So I do like that. It's kind of the interoception and exteroception, kind of feeling inside, but utilizing things on the outside as well. Well said. So now we progress into your background. You got all this history of a variety of things, and you started a company. What was that next step?
Yeah, so we started as an education company first and foremost, right? And so, having had a lot of depth to my clinical experience, I started training other therapists quite a while ago, and then honestly, man, I kind of stumbled upon, if I'm being honest about it, a pattern that exists in the human body. So I'm a total nerd. Like my Instagram handle is Fascia nerd, right? Like I geek out on this tissue stuff. Yeah. Like we're like the gold sponsor of the International Congress of Fascia Research. It's like you're not killing the ladies with that claim, right? But at the same time, it's I love tissue science and this fascia, the connective tissue, is like the more we discover about it, the more we're talking about it as like an organ system and a system of communication through the body, and this bidirectional signaling that ties into our stress, into the nervous system. And really it has so much to do with like our awareness of self, and even like people are talking about it as part of our conscious. And so it's just fascinating stuff to me. But I've been working with the fascia as my primary target tissue in our approach. And I used to find like these areas that felt the same, right? It's like, okay, if you have this, restriction up in your shoulder, I'm also going to find this restriction in your low back. And I might also find it in your leg. And one day I was like working on somebody and I'm like, yep, there it is again. I can find it here and I can find it here. And then like I was looking at this muscle chart and all of a sudden I like cracked the code. I saw that there's like these repetitive patterns in the tissue. And I was like, this is in the same place as this, And once I started seeing the pattern, we mapped the pattern, we put a numerical grid to the pattern, and now I can teach people how to find those relationships in the body super easy. And it doesn't matter like where it starts, but if your pelvis is out of alignment, everything's out, right? Because you want your eyes and ears to be level. So if your hips are out and your spine starts to curve, you're going to correct it, when you get up to the eyes and ears. But the effort that it takes to correct that and to move when you have these imbalances are going to form tissue change at predictable places. And so we cracked that code, and that's really the basis of what we've built the company on now. right, is that educational path. I'm also like, if there's one other thing I'm a nerd about, I'm kind of like a closet interior designer. Like I love to design space. I love like minimal space. I love clean lines. And so, we built out our initial clinic. We kind of opened up additional units as a franchise. We mentor therapists, as part of our business. And it's just, it kind of has evolved pretty organically, but all based on the lens in which we see the body, and that's universal across anybody in our system, as we all look through that same lens.
Now, for the person out there listening or watching that doesn't quite understand what fascia is, I'd like to kind of go into a bit more, maybe a few levels deeper, so people can kind of understand it. Because whenever I've ever talked about fascia, one of the easiest ways I kind of get people to visualize it is I kind of mention to them, when you crack an egg, and it's that layer that you need to kind of get through if you want to smoothly take out the egg. I always kind of say that that's similar to fascia, but like, I don't know if that resonates with you, but how would you describe it to the person who doesn't quite get it or understand what fascia is?
There's two ways to talk about fascia. One is as an individual tissue. So fascia is tissue that has multiple different densities to it. So you have very dense fascia that would be found like, on the bottom of your foot, the plantar fascia, or at the low back, at the thoracolumbar fascia, or at the nape of the neck, at the ligamentum nochae, or at the IT band, right? So this fascia is like really dense, stiff, high tensile strength, doesn't move, doesn't stretch, just kind of is there for stability. But then you have smaller fascia that is around the organs, around every single muscle belly, each individual muscle fiber. The fascia comes together to form tendon. The fascia covers the periosteum of the bone, all the organs. And some of the more loose, irregular fascia with less dense collagen is actually more like snot, right? I mean, think of it as like a thick fluid. And when, yeah, man, like, so when you go out in the cold weather and you get like that, as a kid, you get that like clear snot, running down and forming icicles off your lip. That's like healthy fascia, right? But then when you have a cold and you get, like real thick, yellow, nasty, right? That's like fascia that's become overworked and is starting to gum up and adhere, and it's losing its elasticity and it's losing the properties that keep it healthy and allow for smooth movement. So as when we talk about it as a tissue, you can talk about multiple individual types of fascia, but I like to talk about it as a system, the fascial system, where all these different types of tissue function together to provide communication and fluid movement throughout the body. So what happens with age is people dry out and they start losing that elasticity of the fascia. And that's what loads up, restriction in muscle. That's what puts additional torque on the joints and causes stiffness and loss of range of motion. So fascia is like intricately important to get people moving well and staying healthy.
Beautifully said. Yeah. There's always this kind of conversation or debate around the IT band, and I'm glad you included that in your explanation, because sometimes you get people that they may want to roll out the IT band thinking that it's supposed to get as loose as, say, the other types of fascia, and it's not happening, right? So I'm glad you said it like that, because I want people to understand what you do and how you think of it as a system to enhance the movement, right? To enhance, the integrity of the entire system. So I think what I want to do is share my screen to your website. And, I don't want to jump ahead, but like maybe you can walk us through what that looks like, because the website I'm going to, for those that are watching, is Structural Elements, the main one. So here we are, structuralelements.com. and this is your education around what you're
So
doing,
this
right?
site is kind of our main site, and both serves as an overview of the education and the approach, as well as allows for patients to find us in our 3 clinics, right? But then the SE Online, that goes to our patient-facing platform. We have 2 clinics in Maryland and 1 clinic in Wisconsin. So if people aren't, in one of those geographical places to benefit from seeing us in a clinic, they can benefit from our online resources, which are all sorts of different different videos and tools of how to improve your posture, how to, free up restrictions in the connective tissue, how to control inflammation with healthy diet, how to, downregulate your stress response for, better physiology and function. And we even break things down to if your back hurts, right, here are rescue moves for the pelvis, or if your knee hurts, here's some stuff that, can work on the knee. So yeah, there's tons of resources, and it's a subscription, right? It's $11 a month, and we donate a subscription for everyone that we sell to make sure that we're taking care of people that don't have the means, but still deserve the care. So.
I shouldn't have had the volume on that one, but it's a very well built. Both the sites that I had that I'm showing, I showed the structuralelements.com website, and now I'm at the lab.structuralelements.com, and I think it's really well done. And just a quick glance through the website, you can tell that it's going to be very interactive, and I think that should be the experience. It feels like it would almost be like working with a trainer. So how would that be? Let's say someone comes to you, or they listen to this podcast, or they are somehow driven to one of your sites. What can they and should they expect to happen?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that we look at the body through a particular lens, right? And we are very much of the form dictates function school of thought. So posture matters, alignment matters, right? And asymmetries in the body, rotations, deviations in the body, they cause the body to move inefficiently. So we're always teaching people about proper alignment, proper posture, how to balance, a joint so that, if your shoulders are rolled forward, you need to release the front of the shoulder and strengthen the back of the shoulder to put it into a better position. If your knees, if you're experiencing knee pain, chances are, you need to release the lateral aspect of the knee and strengthen the inside of the knee to get that patella to track better. So, we kind of go through and do biomechanics 101 by educating people how to improve joint function and integrate that into organization of the body as a whole. And then again, we address the fascia, right? So you mentioned the IT band, and no, rolling back and forth up and down the IT band is not going to lengthen the IT band. However, pinning the IT band on a foam roller and bending and straightening your leg will free the IT band from the underlying fibers, right? And that will restore movement. So, we call it pin and strip. There's a bunch of different techniques of how you pin tissue, take it through a functional range of motion to restore, movement. And a lot of times people, there's a bunch of tools out now, right? All the Theraguns and hypervolts and all stuff. And everybody just beats the snot out of what hurts. It's like they go right to the site of pain. And I'm like, 90% of the time, that's already overstretched, overworked, inflamed tissue. You have to think about what's actually tight, not what's overstretched and weak. A lot of times the pain is where it's overstretched and weak. So just helping people look at the body through that lens and directing them to where they can actually be impactful with their efforts. Everybody's busy. Nobody wants to take a lot of time, wasting time, not getting themselves better if they're gonna, try to alleviate some of their own discomfort. But, we want you to be more effective and not making the problem worse.
So do you have some sort of assessment protocol or guideline that you take people through to identify these kind of things? Or is it solely based on, well, I'm coming here because my shoulder hurts, or I'm coming here because my knee hurts?
That's why
that
people
work?
come to us is oftentimes because of either loss of performance, right? We do work with a lot of athletes. And so, you might have an athlete saying, man, my times are getting worse, right? Not better, and I'm training harder. My times are getting worse. Or you have, a pitcher, who's just, throwing all over the place and they've lost some of their accuracy, or people are just in pain, man, it hurts when I do that. And so that's usually what brings people in is they recognize that there's a compromise to function. And then the process is we start to educate them about where the problem is actually stemming from. Again, somebody might come in with headaches and neck pain, and we're going to say, well, man, there's no way we're getting your head and neck better unless we address those feet. Like your foot's collapsed, that's dropping a hip. Because your hip is dropped, that's animating the spine, and then now you're correcting the position of your head and neck to find what we call neutral horizon. There's no way that's going to get better. You can rub it, you can put gel on it, you can put a ball against it, you can do all the things, but until we correct your feet, right, and get the pelvis neutral, you're going to keep making that compensation. So when we start educating our patients about that, we get them focusing on the right things to rehabilitate. Right? Like you never rehab that ankle. You have terrible proprioception. It's throwing your gait off. And that's why your knee hurts, or that's why, So once we direct people, then it's pretty common sense medicine. The interventions, none of them are particularly difficult. It's just doing the right stuff to make a difference.
Well said. So I feel like, we're at this point where I think you're going to be able to nail this very well, because since the last maybe 6 shows, maybe 7 shows or so, I've been introducing a Pomodoro Break. And it's essentially, for those who don't know what that means, it's just a way to sort of break up the sedentary lifestyle or moments of sedentary movement or lack thereof. And we've had some very interesting ones on here so far, but I feel like you might be able to offer something for the general person out there. Like, let's say you've been sitting for 20, 30 minutes and your body wants to move. What is something you could offer for a Pomodoro Break?
It's going to be really simple. It's not going to be a ton of movement that is going to be involved with it. But what it's going to do is it's going to reset your nervous system. So when we sit for a while in an upright position, the head tends to fall forward and the shoulders tend to follow. And our sympathetic nervous system is stimulated right in our mid-back. So a lot of times when we've been sitting, that mid-back starts to get fatigued, and that starts to ramp up our sympathetic. And once our sympathetic is ramped up, we're not concentrating, we're not getting good blood flow, we get cut off from our breathing. So what I like to do is have people actually lay flat on their back. And when you lay flat on your back, you're going to get into a real simple position. Okay. So when you lay flat on your back, yep. And the bed's okay for this. If you're at home, do this on. Yeah, floor's a little bit better because the firmness of the floor is gonna set you up, for a little bit better traction. Yeah, that'll be perfect right there. So what you're gonna do in that position is you're gonna bend your knees, put your feet flat on the floor. Okay, so both knees bend. Yep, your feet about hips width apart. I want you to do a single pelvic tilt. You're going to lift your hips up off the ground, and then you're going to roll your spine down to flatten your back against the floor. So roll down, tailbone comes down last. All right, and then you're just going to let gravity do the work. So you're not holding any tension there. That just lets it all relax. Now you're going to do the same thing with lengthening your neck. You're going to bring your chin up towards your chest. When you lift your chin up towards your chest, you're going to keep that chin tucked as you roll the spine back down, keeping the back of the neck as flat as possible against the floor. Yep. So when you rest there, your chin should be tucked and the neck should be nice and flat. You're going to bring your palms face up and go out a little bit wider than you are right now, about 45 degrees out. What that'll do is allow you to relax those shoulders back towards the ground. So once you're in this position, you want gravity to do the work. You shouldn't feel like you're holding any tension. You should just be able to relax in that position. The active part of this exercise is what you're going to do with your breath. As you inhale, I want you to push the abdomen up towards the ceiling. So like you're blowing up a balloon. The belly should go up towards the ceiling as you inhale. What this is going to do is it's going to engage the diaphragm, and you're going to get a nice stretch and good diaphragmatic breathing. There's a ligament that runs along the front of your spine. Okay, it's called, the big fancy name, it's called the anterior longitudinal ligament. Pretend that you have a necktie that's tucked into the front of your pants. Okay, that normally wants to pull you forward and down. As you breathe, I want you to picture that you're untucking that necktie and that it's freeing your neck up from your belt line, that you're getting length along the front of your spine. So every time you inhale, you're pulling on that necktie, and as you exhale, you should feel things soften and lengthen. So what this is going to do is you lay there. I recommend people lay there for 3 minutes, okay? And all you're doing during that time is this nice deep inhale, pushing the belly out. As you exhale, let everything soften and lengthen. And as you're doing that, you're getting your nervous system to downregulate. Your exhale stimulates your vagus nerve, and that helps get your parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest, our relax function, stimulated. So the last thing we're going to play with here a little bit is I want you to inhale for 4 seconds, push the breath out, get that belly button nice and high, hold for 2 seconds, and then we're going to try to exhale for 6 seconds on the way out. Good. So you inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 2 with that belly pushed all the way towards the ceiling. And then try to exhale for 6 full seconds. By having the inhale shorter than the exhale, on the inhale we get sympathetic stimulation, which revs up the stress response. So by exhaling longer than we inhale, you're going to get a real nice calming effect. It's going to stimulate that vagus nerve, and we're going to downregulate our autonomic nervous system. This is a biohack, man. You do this for 3 minutes once a day. It's going to change your life over a course of a couple of weeks.
That is profound. Thank you for that, man. I do a lot of work with breathing, and I know that there's some advantages of doing breath work lying down, or whether you're on your belly or you're on your back. And one of the things I could feel, it was really cool to be able to have you in my ears while I'm down there, but what I could feel was this sense of calm. And I could also practice expanding not only the belly button, or having the belly reach up towards the ceiling, but I could also feel Absolutely. That 360 degree expansion and the lungs in the upper back. I could feel it better on my back, right? And so this
when
reminds
you're
me
on
of
your
foundation
back, you have a little bit of
like
resistance to pull against, right? And so it actually allows you to kind of expand between the ribs a little bit more. And again, we're always unsupported in that mid back, and so the spine tends to round. And when you put yourself into that length and traction position, you're going to get more length from head to tail. It'll really help organize things. And but I'm telling you, like, we call it the traction exercise. And on that SE lab site that you pulled up, that lab.structuralelements.com, that exercise exists outside of the paywall. So you don't need to be a subscriber. We have a really good video that walks you through that exercise. And so you don't have to be a subscriber. That's our gift to the world, man. If everybody did traction for 3 minutes a day, we'd be living in a better place. So yeah, right there, that SE traction. SE traction right up on top.
Oh, for sure. Where is
right
that?
There. You click on that, and that's outside of the paywall.
This is the one that played the music, right?
And it'll walk you right through what we just went through right there.
Aha. Okay. So yeah. So if you're watching this, this is why I learned how to mute it just now. And this is Mr. Bertram walking this young lady through the same thing I was just doing. She's on a massage table, and I think this is amazing. So that's a great one of my favorites so far. Pomodoro breaks that we've done on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for walking me through that, man. I got a bit of your expertise in that little bit. So, so what is probably like the most common person you have come to you nowadays?
Again, we range in age, and everything else. And it's not all, we do work with professional athletes and all of that, but we say that we work with active individuals. And this is kind of an important thing is, we never focus on getting people out of pain ever. We always are focused on restoring people back to the activities that they're wanting to do. So the goal is, somebody comes in and they say, oh, my back is killing me. And my first question is, well, what would you do with your time if your back didn't hurt? Right? Oh, I'd love to get back to playing basketball. Oh, I would love to, get back to running. Okay, well, let's focus on getting you back to getting on the court. Right? Let's focus on getting you back to running. Or, you might have, somebody who just wants to play with their grandkids and get on up and down off the floor. Right? Oh, but my knees hurt. All right. Well, let's focus on being able to get you up and down off the floor. That's the goal for every patient is restoring the motion, restoring the activities and the movements, not getting out of pain. The pain goes away like just somewhere in the process, right? We don't even focus on that. That's the easy part. But if you focus on pain, people stop as soon as they're out of pain. They never gain more experience, right? So, we work with people clear on to build the confidence to return back to sport and return back to the activities that they love. Because that's the juice. That's what it's all about right there.
So then and I love that because that's more of the big picture, right? Yeah. That's what we should be focusing on. It's kind of like the conversation around weight, right? If you're just jumping on a scale that gives you a number, that assumes that you trust that scale and that, whatever process that's happening. But, I used to use the sort of the analogy of, well, if you just want to lose weight, then cut off one of your limbs. That's probably the quickest, way to do it. But it's going to disrupt a lot in your life, right? But how about we focus on changing your body composition and, and then getting to the root of why you even want to change your weight in the first place. Right? Because a lot of that comes from traumas that we've had and insecurities and all these things. And so that's kind of what you're talking about. And I love that approach. I really do. So I would assume through this whole pandemic and whatnot, you have a lot. Well, again, clearly on your website, you show all of the stuff that you can teach people to do at home. But do you also have like a brick and mortar facility?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have three brick and mortar clinics, 2 in Maryland and 1 in Wisconsin. And we have a number of therapists that work in our clinics of multiple licensures, right? So we have physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists, athletic trainers, massage therapists, Pilates instructors. We have all these different professionals, but we all look through the same lens. Everybody's been trained in our proprietary methodology, and we all look at the body holistically, right? We're all focusing on balance of the pelvis. We're all focusing on the health and fluidity of the connective tissue, and we educate people to find and maintain that balance. And so that's what we do in the clinics. And we even have a network of providers who are outside of our clinics that we have trained and that we mentor. So on our website too, you can locate a provider. So even if we don't have a clinic near you, we might have somebody, in your area. And if we don't, send them our way, right? If you have a massage therapist or a PT or something that is good, but you think they would benefit from learning from us, we are always looking to bring more people into our camp.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I might be talking with you a little bit more after we do this show because, I love to learn, and I think we all should be curious to learn more in whatever fields we're in and beyond. But seriously, I definitely want to talk with you more about that because I would love to kind of dive in more to what you guys are doing beyond just this podcast. So so far what you're talking about is great, and I guess probably another reason why I would like to know that is because or to know more about that is, so I have scoliosis. And, I found out that I had scoliosis when I was, relatively late in high school. I think I was like a junior, and this chiropractor happened to be a substitute teacher for English class for like a week. And I was a smart kid, top of the class, but I also was a class clown. And, when the teacher was there, I finished my work early, and he was like giving his spiel at the beginning of class, introducing himself, saying, "Hey, I just recently moved to this town, a very small town. Just moved to this town, and I have a chiropractic care, facility. And so if anybody has any questions that doesn't pertain to class, but you want to talk to me about something that has to do with chiropractic care, then come back and let me know." So I went back there, just kind of wanted to shoot the shit with him, and I was like, "Hey, by the way, I don't know what it is, but I kind of have this it's not painful, but like this nagging sensation in my back every once in a while, and I usually feel it when I'm sitting for long periods of time. What is it?" And so he's like, "Well, why don't you stand up?"
Yeah.
Bend over, the usual test from back in the day, right? The scoliosis test. And what was interesting is when I bent over, my spine was straight, or, more normal. And, but when I stood up, it's when he was like, he's like, "Well, you know what? You should come by my office, and, we'll run some x-rays and do some things and, kind of see what's really going on." So I was like, "Okay, cool." Didn't think anything of it. Went to his office, a couple of days later, does x-rays, and he showed me the x-ray from the lateral view, which most people know this, like our spine is supposed to have this natural curve to it. So the way that S shape looked from the side was exactly how it looked from the front. And so he tells me, he was like, "Okay, well, I'm not sure if you know what this is, but you have scoliosis." Now, at the time, I'm thinking oh my, is that some kind of disease? Like, what is that? I didn't really know what that was. And honestly, anytime I had heard of scoliosis, it was always the extreme cases, right? And so he educated me and let me know that, it can be enhanced. It can be, it doesn't have to progress, and you don't have to get surgery and all these things. But, that was kind of my first foray into the world of scoliosis and all of these changes that the body makes based on compensation movement patterns, right? And so dealing with that, I understand that there is this network and things can be enhanced and you can work it out. But do you get clients or patients
9 times out of 10
scoliosis, and how do you kind of
there
work
is
through
congenital scoliosis where there's deformity of the true spine, or it can also be from neurological complications, or it can be from changes of muscle tone on either side of the spine that cause a true anatomical scoliosis. But what walks into the clinic every day is functional scoliosis, right? And functional scoliosis can come from either a leg length discrepancy that's uncorrected or from an imbalance to the pelvis, right? And so with the pelvis is if very commonly you'll get like a rotation on one side and it'll shift up on the other, and that starts to animate that curvature of the spine. So people walk in with that all the time. Once we balance the pelvis, they walk out with a straight spine. I mean, that's something that we treat on the daily. Sometimes there is an anatomical, like after you go through a growth spurt, sometimes one, growth plate on one side isn't as open as the other, and it causes like a true leg length and anatomical discrepancy. And again, if that's uncorrected, take off one shoe and not the other, it's going to tip your hips, and you're going to start getting some S curve. But a lot of times there's a functional component to it. I'm not saying that some people don't have a true curved spine, but if you have an imbalance, it's going to make it much worse, right? And so we treat that all day long, every day.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I think one of the things that, because the chiropractor asked me, was I born with this, or was this something that developed? So I guess he was trying to figure out kind of what you were just talking about, right? The kind of the differences. And I told him I didn't know, because I didn't know. But I do recall two major situations that could have allowed this to develop. And one was
like a kid, right?
Like an idiot. Like a kid, like a proper kid. I was swinging from the monkey bars. Yeah. Swinging from the monkey bars from my legs, and did the whole backflip thing, and one time I ended up falling straight on my head and got the wind knocked out of me, and, didn't think anything of it. Just kind of got up and went to class, because I was just mortified. I didn't want anybody coming to help me and whatever. So that was one. And another time I was playing basketball and I went up for a dunk, and I I think I got hit, fouled, and I ended up sliding along the floor all the way into this wall. And so my head and neck was tilted forward, and bam. So that happened. And then in terms of like a non-injury, I used to wear, when I thought wallets were cool in the back pocket, I used to wear a wallet on my right side, hip, all the time. And so this was one of the things that he pointed out. And again, I didn't think, I'm like, this doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, this little model here is called the tensegrity model, right? And so it's meant to emulate like the pelvis, right, and the stability of the pelvis. So if you start to rotate, anything like, higher or lower, you're gonna create, animation of the spine that's going to work itself, all the way up to the head and neck. So a lot of times people come in and they'll have a rotation, and that rotation is going to start to curve and twist the spine. So if we balance the pelvis, then the spine just kind of stays nice and balanced, between the hemispheres of the pelvis. And again, it doesn't always start in the pelvis. That rotation might have come from a sprained ankle where, you really shifted things, or from falling on a hip or whatever. But once that's out, your pain might be somewhere totally different. Your pain might be in your shoulder or in your neck, or, it might be in your hamstring or something like that won't heal. And then, like a lot of people will come and they've been through PT, or they've seen their athletic trainer, or they've gone to their chiropractor, and it's not getting better. And then we look at them through a different lens. And we're like, well, no wonder you didn't get better. Look, you have this huge rotation. And once we correct that, it's really pretty straightforward.
So then, so aside from the 3-minute
traction
Pomodoro break, what do you call that, by the way? Is there a name for what you had me do? Okay, so besides I'm looking at I better plug my computer in because I'm just realizing that it might die. We don't want that to happen. So aside from the traction exercise you had me do, is there another type of assessment that a person could do, like in terms of like real time?
Yeah, I mean, there's some simple ones, right?
Assessment.
One of them is simply putting your arms straight out in front of you and lowering down into a squat. And can you lower down without lifting your heels off of the ground, right? And as people lower down, a lot of times what they'll feel is that as they're lowering, they'll rotate or they'll twist. And that's a good indicator as to whether the hips are balanced or whether you're losing flexibility. That's a function. Anybody, like any runner, any sprinter, anybody that's, playing basketball, playing baseball, they should be able to perform a squat where they lower down and place their butt against their heels without lifting their heels up off the ground. If they can't, that's a basic fundamental movement of any athlete, right? We train a lot of athletes to develop skills, but we don't train them to have proper mechanics for those skills. And there's a lot of people, who can hit the cover off of a baseball, but man, they are a ticking time bomb because they don't have good functional movement, right? And so they're prone to injury as a result. So lowering down into a squat is a good one. There's another one from that same traction position that I had you do earlier. If you simply move your feet. So let me start here. When the feet are closer together and you drop your knees from side to side, you're going to rotate through the low back, pretty high up into the low back. If you move your feet wider than the hips and you drop your knees side to side, you're going to rotate really low through the sacroiliac joint and through the low spine. That's a great exercise. I call it windshield wipers, dropping those knees side to side, but with the feet wider than the hips. That'll really exploit differences in mobility of that SI joint and compare side-to-side movement. So you're alternating, right? So just like
you do it at the same
on a
time,
car.
right? Like
so you're dropping that knee towards midline
right.
as the other one goes out, and you'll feel tightness from one side to the other. I call these rescue moves for the pelvis. So if anybody subscribes to Lab, rescue moves for the pelvis is like a series of a few different exercises that restore that functional movement to the hips. Another one is single knee to the chest, right? So you squeeze with both hands, you squeeze the knee to the chest, let it go, alternate. What that does, it introduces like differential movements between the windshield wipers and the knee to chest. You'll restore a lot of that functional movement back to the hips and to the SI joint. It's a great warm up before you do any more. Like if you're going to do any squats or you're going to do deadlifts or hip hinges or anything like that, it's a great exercise to warm up prior to doing those more complex movements.
And when you're doing the knees,
with the knee bent,
you would still leave the foot. The
if you drop the other leg flat,
bent, right?
You're going to have too much stress on the hip flexor, on the psoas, and it'll pull the low back back into an arch. Then when you try to bring that other knee up, you're not getting as deep of a stretch into the low back.
I love it. Okay, so I want to throw another one at you. Something else I'm dealing with. So selfishly, I'm taking notes. So I recently discovered that I have a slight hernia, inguinal hernia. And, with all the things that I do, obviously I understand that there's something off in the system, right? And, apparently there's a inguinal hernia. And I've been trying to work through that as best I can. And everyone tells me that, and it may be true, that you have to get it repaired.
There certainly is a circumstance where repair is necessary, right? Depending on whether you're getting any, sort of protrusion of the intestine and are at risk of infection or anything else because of an obstruction that would result. But a lot of times, again, I go back to the dang pelvis, man. If the pelvis is rotated and you aren't leveraging one hemisphere off of the other, especially at the front of the pelvis, at the pubic symphysis, if you're dropped out a little bit and you're not getting think of a suspension bridge pushing one side against the other, you flip that upside down and you have the pelvis. And if you're not able to press off of the one side and get all the stability of the bones of the pelvis, you're going to rely on muscles and soft tissue to try to recreate that stability. And that will cause a lot of stress and strain, to the attachments to the pelvis. So there's some redundancy with the abdominal muscles that can make a huge difference when you kind of recruit them properly. The transverse abdominis muscle is your girdle muscle, right? It really is the only muscle that allows you to squeeze the abdominal contents in. And a lot of people, when they go to lift their leg or flex their thigh and activate their psoas or their hip flexor, they disengage that transverse abdominis muscle at the same time. And that loads up that inguinal area. If you train yourself to really engage that transverse abdominis while doing that thigh lift, it's a much more stable environment. The best exercise to train that is you take a simple wood dowel, like a closet rod, right? We have, some of like the Pilates, rods and bars and stuff like that. But it just needs to be, 4 or 5 feet in length, nothing fancy. You take that rod and you hold it at solar plexus height and you push it down into the ground. You want to be careful not to lean into it, but you want to push it down. That will cause that transverse abdominis muscle to fire. Okay, you'll feel a real static tension into the abdominal muscles, in particular that transverse abdominis. People can do that and they're like, oh yeah, I really feel my stomach muscles engaged, right? Now march in place. Okay. And so while you're doing that downward pressure, then a lot of people don't know how to move then because they can't separate keeping that transverse engaged while doing the hip flexion. So once you have that rod down and then you learn to march in place, it'll train you to keep that transverse abdominis engaged while activating the hip flexor against a stable trunk. And that's a game changer for how you load up that inguinal area. So that's something to work on. But again, if it's, not I'm not going to diagnose you and give you medical advice here, but certainly, hernias are something to watch closely and make sure that it's not involving, any sort of obstruction or intestinal prolapse or anything like that. So
thank you for that. And that's really cool. I'm going to try that for sure. and see how it goes. The first thing I thought of is I have one of those stick mobility.
You can even use
sets,
I use the tall one. I have those sitting right next to me right here. I use the tall one for that, and I just grab it mid shaft and push down on it, and then as you march in place on it, it's golden. That's a great tool to use.
Yeah, thank you for that. This is great. I mean, clearly you know your stuff. And, I was thrilled to be able to chat with you because, it's nice to be able to not only like help me, but help others. And I want to do as much as I can to kind of introduce you to my platform so that people can reach out and understand. And, who knows, maybe they sign up, they subscribe.
Man. I mean, for us,
or you might find,
for us, real close, man, like the idea for us is we want to have impact. That's it. Right. And so, my belief is that, the world is a better place when people are active, and being able to get out and they're kinder, they're in a better mood, they're healthier. And so anything that we can do to help facilitate people being active and healthy in their body, that's what we're here to do. So. Well said.
So, before we get to the last couple questions of the show, what are some things that you feel like maybe
the other thing is that we touched on it with the traction position and the importance of regulating your autonomic nervous system, but the reason why posture matters, the reason why you're taking care of your connective tissue matters, is because your main regulatory system in the body is the autonomic nervous system. And people spend so much time in a heightened stress response, in a sympathetic state. And that affects our digestion. It affects our blood flow. It affects, our pupils dilate. It affects our ability to heal and repair tissue. It's like everything. And so if people are stuck in that state for too long, it's an uphill battle. You have to downregulate that nervous system to be receptive to change in the body. And when you're in a parasympathetic state, the opposite is all true, right? It relaxes your connective tissue. It improves your digestion. It gives better oxygen, through the lungs and into the blood. It helps repair tissue and drive circulation out into the extremities. So, we can do all the movement in the world. We can eat all the right stuff. We can, but if we're not getting regulation of our nervous system, it's all for naught. It's not going to work. Right. So it doesn't take all day, those breathing exercises, that traction exercise, it makes a big impact in a small amount of time, so, but that's, something I don't want your listeners to walk away without understanding, because that's critical.
Absolutely. I talk a lot about breath work and meditation and HRV analysis and all that stuff on this show. So I feel like people probably can relate, and I thank you for sharing that, because it is important. It's like it goes very much in line with it doesn't matter how much you're working out. I mean, to a certain degree, of course it does matter, but like if you're going to have a crappy diet, then like what are you doing? And it's or not even sleeping, right? Like I think sleep gets such a bad rap, or people overlook it. But obviously we need to be sleeping, because, then that helps the digestion. And then also when it comes to digestion, if you don't have, if you have leaky gut, or you don't have a good digestive system, then what's the point of spending money? Right. People are spending money on organic food and supplements, as we all probably should, right? But you got to fix your gut in order to be able to assimilate any of that stuff, right? So definitely the big picture. Okay, so at the end of the show, I always like to ask guests two different questions. And the first question is, what are your top two pet peeves? What are a couple things that get under your skin? This is probably a little different answer than what maybe that get under your fascia.
will give you. But my first and foremost is Band-Aids off the body, man. Like when I go and swim laps, right, and there's a Band-Aid floating in the pool, I'm like, what is wrong with these people, man? Like, why would you do that? Like your mother raised you wrong, And so that's number one. It takes the cake right there. That's an unacceptable, human faux pas, right? But then honestly, yeah, man. And then my other one is, because I'm in the medical
That's
field,
definitely
right,
a first on the show.
is the arrogance of a medical provider unwilling to say, I don't know. Right. And so for me, it's like, what's key is that we all remain humble and have humility. And my patients, when I say to them, I don't know, right, but I'm going to try to find out. Right. That's the biggest confidence builder that you could ever have, with a healthcare provider, is that transparency and that honesty. And I feel like so much of our healthcare system is tarnished with people that are unwilling to admit not having all of the answers, and the body's complex, man. There's all kinds of stuff we don't understand about it, so we should remain curious. We shouldn't ever think that we know it all.
I wholeheartedly agree. And both of those are great ones. I love the Band-Aid one, though. That's really funny. Yeah. So, okay, the last question is probably one of my most favorite questions because of what it brings out of people.
Well,
and that question is, what is something
I'm so grateful. The body is a delicate balance, and to have your health and to be ambulatory and to be able to be active is something that I never take for granted, because I've been injured and I've lost that in the past, and I've been ill and I've lost that in the past. And every day, it's like we have these temples that need to be celebrated. And when people take that for granted, I think they're missing a lot, and because, we are these delicate balances, so I'm most grateful that I've been able to have, like you said in the beginning of the show, I've done Ironmans, I've run 100-mile races, I've done all this crazy stuff, and my body has allowed me to have that experience, which has been phenomenal, so I'm most grateful for that.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, Doug, it's been a really, really good time chatting with you. For people that want to follow more of what you're doing or to try to connect with you directly,
what again, all the social media handles are you can find them all on our website, but most of them are just structural elements, on Instagram and on Facebook and everything. Our website is what, we do have a blog connected to the website. We're posting articles all the time. And then, we're in the process right now. The lab is really, our like what we're putting out far and wide to everybody. Check back soon, probably the next 4 or 5 weeks, it'll be live in the App Store and Apple and Android app. So it'll be released as a native app, which will be exciting. So that'll make it just a lot easier, more user friendly. But yeah, that's the main one right now. Is we're just really trying to give people good information. There's people are on Instagram and they're on YouTube but it's not curated, and it doesn't all fit into a system. And so, we try to give, we have a lot of experts that sit on our panel, orthopedic surgeons and, psychologists and everything else. We really pay attention to the science. Like I said, we're the gold sponsor of the International Congress of Fascia Research. Like, we pay attention to this stuff, and so we curate that for you. We're not just going to send you, on a goose chase, So that's what we put together.
Very much appreciated. I want to sincerely thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man.
It's pretty good.
The clinic in action right now.
A lot of people are just face down drilling.
I didn't really hear any noise in the background, so that's cool. I guess
but I do have to get to be patient here. So, but it's been great, man. It's wonderful chatting.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seat belts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen. Better come give us a minute or two. Open the box up, we giving you tools. Giving your engine the fuel that it needs. Breathing into it, it's autoimmune. Make a connection, we're stronger in two. Making us one of a kind of a few. Work on the mind, but show me your moves. If you do what you say, you know what to do. Yeah. Simply walk the talk.